Hello everyone, Zellerant here, and today we're going to take a look at Cyros. He is a fire striker unit in Ash Echoes, and his main things is doing burst elemental zone type damage with fire. And he is going to be on the standard banner, meaning that he is someone that you will be able to use your selector that you acquire at the beginning. And he is going to be quite useful for the fire teams as he's kind of a core member of it. So if you're wanting to go the fire route, then he will be someone that you definitely want to go ahead and pick up. Now, when we take a look at his leadership skills that he comes with, the big thing is he has turn danger into safety. And so this is going to be a very nice tanking skill that applies to vanguards, bulwark, and striker units. And this is when the incoming damage from a single hit exceeds 50% of the total HP, the damage is reduced by 36 to 60%, 48 to 80%, and 54 to 90% at level 3. This will be based off the defense of the unit. Now, this one is not as useful on him just because there's quite a few other SSRs that you can acquire to actually get the skill within on your leader. But nonetheless, this will work really well, being able to take a large hit from, say, a boss. And this one has a cooldown of 10 seconds, so a lot of the bosses, I'm going to guess, are going to be like a lot of other games. They're not going to be constantly throwing these massive hits at you. So cooldown might not have as big of a play in this, because if a boss is doing more than 50% damage every 10 seconds, then it's already going to be a pretty tough fight in the long run anyway. So we have that skill on him, and then we have Fiery Strike, and this one's a little bit more unique to him, as the only other place to get this is on an SR memory trace, and it's only this one right here. And so this one is a crit rate plus 5%. When a fire attack crits, extra damage is increased by 25% at level 1, 50% at level 2, and 75% at level 3. And like I said, this one also just applies to the Vanguard, Bulwark, and Striker. Now, there is a lot of other crit type things in his kit, so you should be able to land crits fairly often. So this one should be something when you build properly, he should be able to have this upkept quite easily. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at his combat skills now. And now on him, he has an active skill, an auto skill, a seed for his ultimate, and then his basic skill here. Now with his kit, it revolves a lot around his seed skill, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at that first. And so this is basically his ultimate, and so one of the key things around him is his ability to switch between a human and Canis form. And so with this form, it basically buffs him quite dramatically. But then also so he switches into that form, and then as well, it will deal fire damage equal to 3000% of his final attack to all enemies within a 600 unit radius. For every enemy unit hit, it restores 8% max HP. Then switches to the Canis form, making basic attacks deal fire damage, increases attack speed, and this lasts for 30 seconds. Every crit landed extends the duration of Canis form by 2 seconds. So that's going to be kind of the key thing. You're going to want to be landing crits so that you can keep them in this mode as long as possible. Using this skill instantly activates the auto skill Howling, so that's his auto skill that he has up there. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the other skills. They're all going to have like two parts to it. One where it's kind of the human form, and then the other one's where it's in his Canis form. Alright, so we'll take a look at his basic here, Original Sinner. So this one attacks the target in front, dealing physical damage equal to 200% final attack. Nothing crazy there. But when he is in the Canis form, every third basic attack will release a ranged attack, dealing fire damage to enemies along the path. And then basic attacks on hit have a chance, which is equal to his current crit rate, to trigger Canine Phantom and dealing an additional 500 damage equal to his 100% final attack. And this increases with the current target's HP up to 100%, as well as restoring 5% max HP. And so that's pretty nice there, because he has a lot of things for restoring HP, and as you'll see here down in his trait, he has ways to mitigate the damage that he's taking. So being able to heal up a little bit of HP makes him fairly competent in being able to tank things himself. So when we look at the actual trait itself, after entering combat, he gains 50% seed charge. So he's already going to be 50% of the way to his ultimate. So he's going to be starting off really close to being able to go into Canis form right off the bat. When he is not attacking, he does restore 100% of his HP per second, so he can just naturally heal if he's not currently fighting. Now, being more of a tank, I don't know how often you're going to be able to pull that off, because you're usually going to want him on the front line taking some of the hits. But depending on your build, because there is another fire unit that can probably be taking some hits as well, depending on how you've built up your team. So that might get a little bit of use. We'll just kind of have to see. I haven't really played around with him yet, or had the chance to use him. But in human form, after not attacking for 5 seconds, he'll activate Block, which reduces damage taken by 80%. And so Block it's an ability where they just put up a defense. It's kind of like a shield, so it reduces the damage taken. But that can be broken through certain skills, so the enemies can break the block. It's not like he just has it up forever. But that is a nice way that he can tank some hits after the enemy's gotten cleared out as new ones are coming. And then his last part is, if he's in his Canis form, he gains a basic damage resistance increase of 12 to 20%. This is based on his defense. And then after not attacking for 5 seconds, the next basic attack deals AoE fire damage, leaving behind a fire zone. And with fire zone, that's just making it so you have an area that you can do some form of elemental reaction with that. So it's a little bit different based on whether he's in human or Canis form, but both of them have kind of a tanking capability to them. Now we look at his active skill here, Daybreak, up at the top. One thing you'll notice immediately with this one is that it has 5 uses, which means that you can use it 5 times in a match or a battle. So you kind of have to be very careful on how often you're using it. And one thing is, it is different based on whether he's in human form or Canis form. And when we kind of look through the skills, you'll kind of notice that this is probably something you're only going to want to use when he is in his Canis form, because it's just significantly more damage. So when he is in human form, he does Daybreak, which he charges forward towards the enemy, dealing fire damage equal to 100% the final attack to enemies along that path. So it's kind of an AoE in that aspect. And then upon reaching the target location, deals fire damage equal to 2700 final attack to the closest enemy within a 300 unit radius, and fire damage equal to 900% final attack to other enemies before returning to the starting position. So it basically just goes out there, hits an enemy for a massive amount of damage, and then does a good chunk of damage to all the enemies around him when he gets out there. Now we look at the bloodline mark for when he's in his Canis form. It's going to be similar to that attack, but just a lot bigger numbers. So this one, he throws the weapon at the target location, dealing fire damage equal to 216% final attack. And this can hit up to 3 enemies in a 300-foot radius of that area. After he throws it, he then charges forward, dealing fire damage equal to 200% final attack to the enemies along the path. Then it does a massive 3,450% final attack to the 3 closest enemies within a 300-foot radius. And then another additional fire damage of 540% attack to other enemies before returning to the starting location. And then dealing fire damage equal to 200% final attack to the enemies along the path on the way back to a starting position. And this also leaves behind a fire zone, so you can use this for elemental reactions with the other elements. So you can tell that there's quite a big difference between the human form, where it's just kind of a large damage type attack. But when you get into his Canis form, he's just doing, not only are the numbers bigger, but there's also more hits involved in it. And so since you're only limited to 5 uses of the skill in a match, this is one where you're probably only going to want to use it when he is in his more advanced form. Alright, and then we go to his auto skill. So this is one that will automatically trigger through the fight on its own. This isn't something that you actively activate. So this one is a buff, Hunting Howling. It has a buff duration of 15 seconds, but also a cooldown of 15 seconds. So this seems like it should be one that you should be able to keep up pretty much at all times. So when you kind of look at it in human form, it gains a crit rate increase of 30% for 15 seconds. While the effect lasts, basic attacks deal AoE fire damage. So while it's up, he's doing AoE fire damage. And each attack deals additional fire damage equal to 100% final attack. So it just makes his attack have a higher crit rate. So if you think with his skill plus this, he's already at 35% critical attack, which is really good right there. And then it basically makes it AoE plus additional 100% attack damage. But then when you look at his other skill here, Howling, this is when he's in the Canis form, so he gets that additional 30% crit rate as well. But then he also gets an increase of 50% crit damage for 15 seconds, so that'll last the same cooldown amount of time. And then while it lasts, basic attacks deal AoE fire damage up to with increased damage, and it's affected by the target's current HP up to 100%. So it can do actually more damage based on how much the HP is left with on the enemy. So this one is, since it's an auto skill, this one you're not going to really be able to control in that aspect. It's just going to run when it's up and available. And it seems like it's going to be one that's always going to just basically be up because it lasts 15 seconds and it has a cooldown of 15 seconds. The big difference might be that if it runs the skill in the human form first, and then you immediately after go into you use your seed skill, I'm not sure if it just keeps the buff from the human form, and so you lose out on the howling skill if you use your seed. So you might want to wait until this cooldown is refreshed before you actually run your ultimate to go into that form to make sure that when it is casted, it uses the better version of it there. And we'll go ahead and take a look finally at his dupes and what you get as you increase in dupes. So we already looked at his trait for his base no dupe 0. So when you go ahead and look at the first one here, what he obtains on the trait is he's able to cast his seed skill immediately. So he's able to do his ultimate immediately and go into that Canis form after he enters combat. And then the cooldown of the seed skill Unforgivable Sin is reduced by 10 seconds. So when he runs out of it, the cooldown is reduced. So if you have ways to make it where he can charge up his seed skill extremely quickly, as soon as he drops out of that Canis form, you should be able to go right back into it by being able to run it again. It just kind of depends on your setup. Now, I haven't tested around with him to see how that is useful, because I don't know how long you're going to be able to keep the skill up in the first place, because when you're critting, you're going to be constantly extending that time or the duration that you're in Canis form. And so the one way I could see where you might need to do that is when you clear out a wave of enemies and you're waiting for more to come towards them. He might not be doing crits at that point because he's not actively attacking someone, and so that's when he might drop out back into his human form. And depending on the timing, you may be able to go ahead and go immediately back into it if you're able to recharge it within 10 seconds. So this one I think is quite important just because you're able to go right into it at the beginning of a fight, entering combat. And so we have that one. Then the second one here, it just increases the stats on a lot of the extra stuff here in his attack. So nothing too crazy in the second one. But then when you get to his third dupe, for every fire echomancer, including himself on the battlefield, Cyros gains 5% crit rate increase and 5% attack increase. So this one is going to be really, really good for him down the line. And so if you're going to go all in on fire, when you eventually get that 300 selector, if you've already got 2 copies of them, you can immediately go into the second one here with your 300 selector. And then hopefully, I mean, at some point when you lose a 50-50 or some other scenario, you eventually get this third dupe. And it's going to make him extremely good in a full fire team comp. Because if you have all fire units, that's automatically going to increase his crit rate up quite dramatically. He's going to be over 50% crit rate at that point. And so he's going to have it a lot easier time staying in his more advanced Canis form. And then when we look at the other ones, this just increases. These ones are just increasing his combat skills, so you'll be able to level these up to 15 if you get his 4th and 5th dupe. So nothing too crazy there. And so the last thing I want to take a look at here is going to be the team compositions they have out here on Pridewood. I'll go ahead and link this in the description. I'm not going to go into depth in these team comps, as I plan to do that once the game releases and I start getting my hands on some of these units to kind of show off how they interact with in combat in game. So I'm going to hold off on going into too much details on how they interact. Just know that these are where you can see some of the team comps. The 2 main ones for him is going to be your Pure Fire team, as we've already kind of seen how he can be really good with the Pure Fire team, especially if you get dupes. The big thing on this one, though, is it does have, at least in the core team, without looking at others to kind of replace them, it does have 2 SSRs. Now, they both are standards, so if you are able to get one of them in your random SSR, you can pick the other one on your selector, and then you'll have the full team. And Fred is going to be extremely easy to get because you can use the SR selector, and she's going to be the one I'm going to tell you to pick every time when it comes to that SR selector, because she's just good with every single team. I'm pretty sure every team on this list has her as your support. Oh, well, I guess this one doesn't, but a majority of them are going to have Freda, as she can do both your healing and increasing your damage done. But then the other team comp you have, if you're not going to go the Pure Fire route, will be the Explosive team. And this is going to be one where you have the fire interacting with lightning to do explosive type damage. It's a fairly similar comp, except it replaces the DPS with the lightning DPS so that you can do some electric type damage there. And so those are kind of the two main team comps you're going to look at with him. There's other different interactions you can have within the game. Like I know with water, you can get vaporize, I believe is what it's called. So these are just kind of the starting ones. And then you kind of have to take in consideration future units that are going to be coming out that we see on the CN side of things. And you can kind of just go to the tier list here and start kind of taking a look at who you might like to get in the future that can work well with him. Like being fire, I know Thea is going to be really good with him in the future. But yeah, that is Cyros, an overall great unit. He'll be extremely good in the starting, and he maintains himself all the way. He stays even in the CN version high up on that tier list, and he's still invaluable to your fire team at that point. So if you're wanting to go the fire direction, he is definitely one that you're going to want to target. But yeah, that pretty much does it for Cyros. If you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. I'm going to continue going through the SSRs through the rest of the week, through release, and then after that I'll start going ahead and looking at team comps and other little things and basic guides on different components of the game. But yeah, thanks for watching.